Hey there, my name is Marley and welcome to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be giving some personalized book recommendations for the characters of the TV show Overcompensating. So Overcompensating is a new TV show on Amazon Prime that I recently binged, and it is such a good show. It is a new favorite. I was dying at like every episode. It was so funny. If you haven't heard of it though, it is a college comedy drama show. Something about me is that I love teen dramas, but this one is nice because it actually has the characters set in college. So a lot of the storylines can be a little bit more mature, but then also it leans more towards being like a comedy than a drama. So every episode is just so funny. The acting is great. The writing is great. Definitely for like kind of a millennial age. Yeah, I just really gotta highly recommend it if you haven't watched it already. It was created by this guy named Benito Skinner, and he's actually the lead actor in the show as well. He's like an online persona comedian, and yeah, he did a really great job with this show. So I had the idea to do a video where I recommend books to some of the characters from the show. I've done this before where I recommend books to some of my favorite TV characters. I'll link those videos down below if you want to check it out. But today we are just recommending for the main characters of Overcompensating. So let's get into it. So our first character is of course Benny. At the beginning of the show, Benny is going to college for the first time. He's feeling pretty uncomfortable with himself, hence him needing to overcompensate a lot because he is still figuring out his sexuality and his identity. It's seeming like he might be gay, but he hasn't fully come to terms with it. In school, in high school, he was always like the valedictorian on the football team, like the perfect student, the perfect kid to his parents. So he's had a lot of pressure on him. But now that he's going away to college, he can finally kind of figure things out. So the first book I wanted to recommend to Benny that I think would be really beneficial for him is Loveless by Ali Oseman. This book follows a character who's going through a really similar journey to Benny. Georgia is going to college for the first time as well, and she has always felt like a little bit left out because she doesn't really relate to everyone else, like all of her friends, when it comes to dating. She is trying to figure out her sexuality during her first year at school. Her story is a little bit different than Benny's because she's kind of figuring out that she is asexual, whereas Benny is figuring out that he is gay, but both of them are trying to figure out their identities, and through a lot of friendships that they make at college, both of them find some like queer mentors to kind of help them through. And so I think Benny would really feel seen reading this, find it really relatable, and it could help him. The other recommendation that I would give Benny is basically any Adam Silvera book. I know there's so many like gay coming out stories that I could share, but I think what some of Adam Silvera's books are really good at doing is kind of just normalizing being gay. Like I think one of his books focuses on kind of the coming out story, but for some of his other books, the characters are just out. It's not a huge deal. And I think for someone like Benny who's really struggling to come to terms with his sexuality, struggling to come out of the closet, not really wanting to be super open about it, I think reading these books that just have very normalized gay characters would be really good for him. It has, you know, gay men in relationships, getting into relationships without such a huge pressure and focus on coming out. So I think Adam Silvera's books could be really helpful and healing for Benny as well. Our next character is of course going to be Carmen. She is the female lead in the show, and she is basically a girl that Benny meets on his first day at college. They attempt to kind of date and hook up when both of them again are trying to overcompensate and kind of prove that they are ready for the college experience, ready to hook up with people, which is being pressured on them to do. But they end up actually creating a really nice friendship. They definitely betray each other throughout the show, but the core of the show really is the friendship. And Carmen is also just trying to figure out her own identity, similar to Benny, now that she's going away to school and now that she has lost her brother. Her brother recently passed away, and we know that they were like best friends. She was really, really close with him for her whole life. So she's trying to figure out like who is she now that her brother is gone. So the first book I want to recommend to her is King and the Dragonflies by Kacen Callender. This is another young adult or like a middle grade book book, but I think Carmen could really relate to it. It's about King, and he's a young boy who has recently lost his older brother, who he really, really looked up to. And so it's him dealing with that grief, processing it. So I think it could be really healing for Carmen. But another complexity to the story is that King was in the process of befriending this other boy in his class that his brother had forbade him from speaking to or being friends with because that boy was gay. So King is also struggling with wanting to, obey his brother's wishes, but he also really wants to befriend this boy and also figure out his own identity, his own sexuality. And so the fact that this has some queer themes and tones to it as well, I think could really interest Carmen, as she is kind of trying to help Benny throughout the show with his story and his coming out journey. It could also help her understand that aspect as well and maybe help her be a better friend to Benny. The second book I would recommend for Carmen is a little more fun, and that's going to be The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is actually an Irish book, but I think Carmen would really relate to this one as well. We're following a main character, Rachel, and she is a college student. I think for most of the book, we might follow her into her adulthood as well post-college, but she basically befriends this guy James, and it's really following their relationship and the chaotic things that they get into, the drama that they both have with friends and with relationships. Rachel herself ends up getting into a bit of an affair situation which I think Carmen would also relate to with what happens in the show with a certain someone. But yeah, she gets a bunch of different romantic entanglements, and then she's also experienced all of this with her best friend James, who is also gay. And so again, really think she would connect with this character and what she's going through, and would find it relatable and fun to read as well. The next character I'm going to recommend books to is Haley Marie Matthews. Easily like the most iconic character from the show. She was so funny. Her delivery is so good. And yeah, the actors did a really good job with this. At least watch the show for her, honestly. Like, she has so many iconic moments. So this is a little bit of a struggle to find books to recommend her, but the first one that I wanted to go with was Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I just think it would match her vibe. This is basically a romance book, but it's quite like chaotic and out there. Similar to her. It's about these two serial killers, but they're not like the worst serial killers. They're giving like Dexter vibes, where they kill other criminals or other serial killers. But the two of them end up having this little connection, and they decide to meet up every year and do this little competition together where they try to kill someone, see who can kill them first. But basically, yeah, it's a romance between two serial killers, and they have really good chemistry. And in the second half of the book, it does get pretty intense in terms of some of the smut and some of the storylines. It gets very unhinged at times. Because of this, it was not my personal favorite, but I think with Haley's energy of just being very kind of sexual, crude, party girl, I think she could be into this kind of book. The second book I wanted to recommend for Haley is Bunny by Mona Awad. The reason I wanted to recommend this is because it is set at a university, and it's kind of like cultish and like for the girls, I feel. So in this book, we're following a main character who is going to university, and there's this group of girls on campus that all call each other Bunny, and it's seeming very like weird, like they have this weird relationship with each other. And then our main character ends up kind of joining in with the cult and seeing what kind of dark stuff they're into. It is a horror book. I think Haley would kind of be into it because it's kind of a unique story. As I said, very female forward, and we know Haley is like a really good friend. She's a girl's girl, even though you wouldn't expect that maybe necessarily when you first see her. We do see her be a really good friend to Carmen, and probably one of the best people on the show. So I think she would get kind of into this kind of weird story as well. The next character we have is Grace. She is the older sister to Benny. At the beginning of the show, she is not the most likable. We see her be kind of rude to Benny. She's mad that he has followed her to the same university when she kind of wanted to separate herself from him. She's dating like this popular guy on campus. And as the show goes on, we learn a lot more depth to her character, like that she was an outcast during high school, got made fun of a lot, and so she's really tried to recreate her image at university, even if it hasn't been in the best ways. And one of the things we find out about her is that she was really into Twilight, the Twilight series. So that kind of helped me with my book recommendation for her. She even has this like radio podcast with a friend talking about Twilight. Anyways, because of that, I think she would really like the book Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a light fantasy novel and a romance. It is following a main character who is a vampire. She has to get into this like forced marriage with a werewolf due to like the political climate. Like she's doing it to kind of like help the alliance between the vampires and the werewolves. So we have this marriage of convenience trope, and we're just kind of learning about the werewolf culture in this book and having the romance between a vampire and a werewolf. So obviously, as a fan of Twilight, I think Grace would really appreciate what's going on in this book. On a more serious note, I would also recommend her the book Begin Again by Emma Lord. This is more of a young adult, new adult story about a main character who's going to college, and she's going to a different school than her boyfriend, who she's had a little bit of a codependent relationship with. So she decides to switch to his school in her second semester or second year, but then finds out that he had actually switched schools as well and didn't tell her. So now she's having to begin again at this new school and again kind of recreate her image, figure out who she is. And she has a similar situation to Grace in that I'm pretty sure she like does her boyfriend's homework, like really helps him out, cares more about the boyfriend than herself, which Grace also is kind of doing with Peter as well. She's helping him out a lot, doing his homework, all that stuff. And she kind of has to learn to like not do that and to like put herself first. So I think she could relate to this book. It could inspire her because they are kind of going through similar journeys. Now, speaking of Peter, he's going to be the last character I'm recommending books to. He was also a little bit tricky to recommend books for. I feel like we wouldn't necessarily have the same interest, but he's kind of a bit of the antagonist in this show. He is like the popular frat bro on campus. He's dating Grace, and he really puts a lot of the pressure onto Benny to be this stereotypical masculine frat guy that Benny does not quite fit into, but he's feeling this pressure to be similar to Peter and fit in with Peter and the other guys. So Peter is pretty unlikable. He doesn't really respect women. We see him do some bad things throughout the show. There is also some depth to him. Like we kind of figure out that he has his own pressures he's dealing with. He's overcompensating in his own way as well. Also, his character is really funny as well. So the first book I thought I'd recommend to him is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. The reason I want to recommend this to him is I feel like it would be eye-opening for him to learn a little more about the toxic masculinity that there is in these like male-centric spaces, because this is about a hockey team. Basically, this town, Beartown, is obsessed with their hockey team. They really idolize all the team members. And then one day, one of the boys on the team sexually assaults a girl in the town. And the whole town kind of has to figure out how they feel about that. It obviously deals with rape culture and the toxicity of like sports and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it would be good for Peter to read something like this and read from a different perspective than his own and learn about what can go wrong when you create this very toxic space. And then the last recommendation for him, a little bit more fun, is The Legacies by Jessica Goodman. There are a lot of like school cult books out there, but this is one that I've read. It is young adult, but it's about this secret society called the Legacy Club. Basically, it is like an honor to be invited, and it's very similar to the Flesh and Gold cult or secret society that we see in Overcompensating, where if you get invited, you are basically set for life. Like everyone in the club is going to help you find success and get jobs and stuff like that. But in this book, we're following 3 girls who I think get nominated to join the group, the Legacy Club. We just know that someone ends up dead at the end of this ball that they are having, at the end of this party. And so I think this would be at first interesting for him because he is obviously very involved in a school secret society, but then also it might teach him again a lesson about what can go wrong when you're doing things like this, having these secrets and these lies and manipulations going on, power, and how that can just get out of control. So that's my recommendation for Peter. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my recommendations. I hope you have watched Overcompensated. If not, definitely go check it out. If you have watched it though, let me know your thoughts on the show in the comments or what books you would recommend them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe for more bookish videos like this, recommendations, vlogs, stuff like that. And I'll see you next time in my next video. Bye.